If you're anything like me, body hair is something that if left unchecked will go completely rogue. To tame a beast that unruly, you need the right tools, and luckily, Manscaped is here to help with their new Lawnmower 3.0, the only trimmer on the market made with advanced skin-safe technology which reduces nicks and cuts and keeps your most sensitive bits safe. Not to mention, it's also water-resistant and can be used in or out of the shower. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist maintenance and hygiene, which means you can expect only the best products made from the best materials. And it's not just for men either, it's suitable for anybody. Manscaped also offers their Perfect Package 3.0 kit, which comes with the new Lawnmower 3.0, as well as their deodorant and toner made specifically for, let's be honest, the smelliest part of your body. Plus, for a limited time, you'll get 2 free gifts, the Shed travel bag and their anti-chafing boxer briefs. If you'd like to give Manscaped a try, you can get 20% off and free shipping when you purchase the new Perfect Package 3.0 kit using my code gilly20 at manscaped.com. It's pretty widely known that over the years, a lot of really good video games have come out bearing the Disney name. Disney gained a lot of really good karma from the beginning by having developers make actually really good games out of their IPs, so they've had a pretty good track record from the start. I think that track record has fallen off a bit since shovelware became more and more prevalent, but still, some of the best and most classic video games of all time are based on Disney franchises. Today, let's take a look at a bunch of console generations from the NES to now and talk about one from each that I think stand tall among the best. This is in no way some sort of definitive list, and more so an archive of the ones that happen to be my favorites or that I think stand out most. Let's go! Okay, so I could have been lazy and taken the easy route and put DuckTales on this list, but I don't think anybody needs to hear about DuckTales for the 10 millionth time, so I'm gonna start things off with something different. A pretty late-era NES game that I don't think gets talked about enough considering how solid of a game it is Darkwing Duck by Capcom. For all intents and purposes, it's kind of a Mega Man clone, and being a Capcom release, I'm not exactly surprised. Much like Mega Man, the stages, or at least the first few, can be played in any order, but honestly, you might as well just play them in order from left to right considering it's obvious what the intended order is since they gradually get more difficult. It's run and gun just like Mega Man, but you can't shoot while running. This is mitigated though by the fact that you can jump while shooting, so it really doesn't get in the way all that much. Also, unlike Mega Man, is a mechanic where Darkwing Duck can grab onto the bottom of platforms and then hop on top of them. This helps flesh out the level design and gives an extra little dash of depth that's a bit more unique to this game, which it does need since it's pretty derivative otherwise. When compared to Mega Man, the game takes a bit more stopping and strategically taking out enemies, and you can't really just rush through guns a-blazing or you'll die pretty quick. The game actually does start to get pretty hard, and it's a bit more challenging than the other Disney Capcom platformers of that era, at least in my opinion. I honestly think this is a really good game, one of the better NES platformers I'd say, but it's constantly outshined by games like DuckTales or Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I was pretty surprised to see that they actually included it in the Disney Afternoon collection, so at least it's starting to get some of the recognition that it deserved. Check this game out if you haven't. It's easily accessible now that it's on that collection. It's definitely one of the best licensed Disney games out there. Aladdin for the Sega Genesis is not only one of my favorite Disney games, but it also happens to be the very first Disney licensed game I ever played. I wore this game out when I was a kid. It was one of those games that, despite not being able to actually beat it, I couldn't help but replay it over and over to see how far I could get, which always ended up being pretty satisfying because even though I couldn't beat it for real, the game has a level skip code done by pausing the game and entering AABBAABBA. I will never forget this code as long as I live, and it's as burned into my brain as the Konami code, if not more so. Aladdin for the Genesis doesn't get nearly as much love or attention as its brother Aladdin on the SNES, which, to be fair, is a much easier, more manageable, and more accessible game, but I honestly think the Genesis version is the better of the two. Not only is it a challenging and well-controlling game, but the art style is absolutely amazing. It's been said dozens of times on the internet by now, but unlike its counterpart on the SNES, Aladdin on the Genesis didn't just have typical pixel art. The game's art was actually hand-drawn and then transposed into sprites, so all the animations in this game look extremely well polished. The music is also very good, the Escape from the Cave of Wonder stage easily being my favorite. Also, Inside the Lamp is probably the best stage to ever be put in a video game. This game is super well made and deserves way more praise than it typically gets. It's not only a really fun game in general, but it's one of the best looking on the Genesis. So now we've hit the 3D era, and I think Toy Story 2: Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue is a perfect example of a licensed 3D platformer done right. Now, it's not perfect, the frame rate is absolutely atrocious to the point where it's quite frankly nauseating. Some stages that have nothing to do with the movie had to be implemented to pad out game length. The controls do feel pretty clunky and outdated for a game that came out well after Mario 64, but overall I think this game did quite a bit more right than wrong, and it's one of the few 3D platformers of that era that are actually worth playing. Toy Story 2 is a product of its time. It's a collectathon platformer. It has you explore various locales of the movie to collect things and complete tasks. It actually reminds me of the Rugrats Search for Reptar game that came out for the PS1 about a year earlier, but done a lot better. If you know the movie, you already know the story beats, but you play as Buzz Lightyear on a quest to rescue Woody. The stages and tasks you complete within them kind of make no sense and have pretty much no context or purpose in serving the narrative that's given to you in between stages. So the various things you need to do in the game to collect the game's main collectibles, Pizza Planet tokens, really only serve as an arbitrary checklist without much purpose. I gotta dock points for the fact that they didn't even try to make the stuff you have to do in the game actually tie in with the story, but that's really not what makes a game like this enjoyable, so I think it's excusable. For this video, I played the N64 version, but it also came out on the PS1 and the Sega Dreamcast, as well as a PC port apparently. This game's got some pretty laughable flaws, but I think it's overall a pretty enjoyable game and one of the better games of its genre that came out at the time, especially for something based on a licensed IP. Having been developed by Traveler's Tales, it's really not too surprising. The game is relatively engaging all the way through, and it's a pretty good time. Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure is a super overlooked game for the 6th generation of game consoles, but it's really well polished and fun. And that's due to one really simple but for the most part not too widely known fact. It's built on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4's game engine. And not just the engine in the simplest term either. I mean, they essentially slapped a bunch of Disney assets on the skeleton of Tony Hawk 4 while retaining most of its mechanics. I first found this game when I walked into a GameStop at a local mall and saw the GameCube version sitting on the pre-owned shelf. I'm not sure why, but I decided to take a chance on it. I took it home and realized it was literally just Tony Hawk but Disney. And I was very surprised because I really had no good way of finding this out since this was back in like 2008 and the information wasn't exactly readily available. Funny enough, the mall I purchased the game in had a skate park at the time that I used to frequent when I was a kid, and that skate park happened to be featured in the promo video that plays during the game's intro. If that's not fate, I don't know what is. Now that we got that little anecdote out of the way, I want to say that if you're a fan of the Tony Hawk series, you will most likely really enjoy this game. It's a bit simplified when compared to Tony Hawk, especially 4, but all the typical ingredients for a fun Tony Hawk game are here, with the added novelty of getting to skateboard as Woody. It's got a pretty good soundtrack too, and though I can't play any songs in this video, it's got notable tracks from bands like Real Big Fish and Simple Plan. Also, upon writing this video, I didn't realize until just now that Toys for Bob actually developed it, so it honestly doesn't surprise me that they managed to make something pretty good with Neversoft's engine. This is one of the best and most overlooked Disney games out there, and it's totally worth checking out. I know I already put a Toy Story game in this video, but oh well. So I've never played this game until now, but Toy Story 3 for the Xbox 360 is actually pretty good. I wouldn't call it amazing, but for what it is, I think it does a good enough job, and to be honest, the 7th generation of game consoles was pretty loaded with garbage when it comes to licensed games. Toy Story 3 is a sort of action-adventure platformer with quite a few different elements in terms of gameplay. When you first start the game up, they throw you right into an endless runner type of intro stage where Woody is riding Bullseye and you need to avoid obstacles. Following this, the game turns into one of those action-adventure beat-em-up style games where you traverse a linear corridor and make your way to the end. The stages that follow range from your typical collectathon minigame hunt to straight-up platforming to even a stealth stage, which I surprisingly found myself not hating despite really disliking stealth sections. One of the cool parts about some of the stages is that you play as Buzz, Woody, and Jessie and have to swap between them depending on the challenge due to the fact that they all have different special abilities. Sometimes this does feel like padding for the sake of padding, but other times it feels rewarding to strategically use each character to help the other out, like using one character to open up pathways for the rest. The game is a bit all over the place in terms of gameplay, and I think it would be far less jarring if the game was longer, but the game is only a few hours long, so each gameplay style really never gets a chance to come into its own. But conversely, the less enjoyable ones never stick around long enough to feel too annoying. I happen to really like the few straight-up platforming sections quite a bit, and overall the game, while not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, is definitely fun and well made. Though to be fair, coming out of this generation, that's not exactly saying much. Still though, it's pretty good and also is backwards compatible for Xbox One, so hey, there's that. So we've reached current gen. This is partially a cop-out as I was trying to avoid including this series as it's kind of a given, but I really can't think of any other good Disney games that came out this generation, at least not any that stand out. Now, I'm sure a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans will consider this inclusion blasphemy considering I didn't include any of the other games from this series before this entry, but if you've watched my Kingdom Hearts 3 video, you'll know that besides dabbling in the first game, I've never played a Kingdom Hearts game other than 3. Still, despite the polarizing opinions on it, Kingdom Hearts 3 is one of my favorite games that's come out this this generation. It had me hooked pretty much from beginning to end, and it's not often a game of its length holds my attention for that long. It does have its ups and downs. The endless instrumental loop of You've Got a Friend in Me in the Toy Story world made me want to jam a pencil in my ear, but I think overall it's a very solid game with fun battle mechanics, and in my opinion it looks very good visually, especially when considering just how long it apparently was in development for. I also had a ton of fun finding all the lucky emblems throughout the game. I definitely needed a little help when it got to the pirate stuff, but the extra layer of a collectathon hunt remained fun during the entire length of the game for me. Say what you want about the previous entries being much better, but I think Kingdom Hearts 3 is a really good action-adventure RPG and easily the best Disney game available on the 8th generation consoles. Spider-Man doesn't count. And that about wraps it up. Disney was always pretty well known for having great licensed games, at least in the early days anyway, so coming up with a list of quote-unquote best games is sort of hyperbolic, but I did want to come up with a list of all the games I personally enjoy best. There are dozens of Disney games, especially during the 8 and 16-bit era, that are well worth checking out and should not at all be written off and assumed to be shovelware like so many licensed properties over the years. So go and check one of these out. You might find something really good that you've never played before, and if you've got any that you think are worth playing, feel free to comment them below. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it and want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there you can check out. And if you want to see everything I upload, subscribe and tap the bell icon. I also have a Patreon right there too if you want to help support the channel.